Good morning. Today we'll talk about psychological disorders. So, psychopathology is the scientific study of mental, emotional, and behavioral disorders, also maladaptive behavior. And psychopathology can be defined by either statistical abnormality, so when an individual either scores too high or too low on a certain dimension, or on social nonconformity. Um, a main element to note about statistical abnormality is that it doesn't tell us whether the statistical abnormalities should be actually viewed as abnormalities. It's just statistical, mathematical. So if you take potentially a larger sample of population, an individual who was scoring supposedly earlier too high or too low might actually now fall on the average scale. Social nonconformity is the failure to conform to the societal norms or the usual minimum standards for social conduct. And an important component about social nonconformity is the need to consider the social context. So potentially a behavior that is viewed as maladaptive or mental in one social context might be viewed completely normal, so to speak, in a different context. Disordered behavior talks about maladaptive behavior. And maladaptive behavior is behavior arising from an underlying psychological or biological dysfunction that makes it difficult to adapt to the environment and meet the demands of day-to-day life. And maladaptive behavior can result in psychological discomfort, disability, and or loss of control of thoughts, behaviors, or feelings. There are different types of psychological disorders. The first one we're going to talk about is personality disorder, and it's maladaptive personality patterns such as paranoia, narcissism, dependency, or antisocial behavior. Please stop right now and check out the YouTube video about an individual who has an antisocial personality disorder. Okay? Another type of psychological disorder is schizophrenia and delusional disorders, which means severe mental disorders characterized by a retreat from reality, by hallucinations and delusions, and by social withdrawal. And it is the most serious type of disorder out of all mental problems, and it is the most difficult to treat. Unlike the popular belief, though it means a split mind, the definition of schizophrenia, it has nothing to do with split in personality or multiple personalities, but rather split from reality. Drug therapies offer some hope, but many psychotic people end up in either prison or committed to a mental hospital. Causes of schizophrenia can be environmental. So women, for example, who are exposed to the flu virus or the rubella during the middle of their pregnancy have a higher likelihood of having children who are more likely to become schizophrenic. Malnutrition during the pregnancy or early psychological trauma can also lead to higher likelihood of children to having schizophrenia. Also, it can be heredity. So some people are just genetically more likely to develop schizophrenia. Additionally, potential changes in brain chemistry can lead to schizophrenia. In fact, some researchers believe that schizophrenia relates to disturbances in the dopamine systems. So when there is changes in the dopamine systems, schizophrenia might develop. And as you can see on this graph, There is an age onset of schizophrenia by gender, and as you can note, men are more likely to manifest schizophrenia earlier in their lives. Over here, we see the peak, whereas women are more likely, compared to men, to manifest it later on in their life. Depressive disorder is major mood disturbances involving deep depression. Bipolar and related mood disorders are major mood disturbances in which depression alternates with periods of mania, meaning the person is agitated, elated, and hyperactive. What causes depression and mood disorders? Potentially biology. So there are certain chemicals in our blood that are related to higher likelihood of developing depression and bipolar disorders. However, this cause hasn't been validated completely yet. Regressed anger, so having the rage being displaced and potentially turned inward as self-blame and self-hate. We talked about learned helplessness in the previous lecture. Life stresses can trigger potentially a mood disorder. Even gender has been found as a factor that is related to this type of disorder. So women are 50% more likely to experience depression, potentially due to higher levels of hormones. Other reasons might be, think about the fact that women are usually stereotyped as nurturing and kind of like the emotional support gurus. So they might have more strain from providing that emotional support that can actually lead to them having some sort of mood disorders. Also, it's possible that men might deal with this type of disorders and depression in particular differently than women. So it's not necessarily that they don't have as a greater likelihood to develop depression, but it's possibly that they might not manifest it in the same symptoms, so to speak. Anxiety disorders are disruptive feelings of fear, apprehension, or anxiety, or distortions in behavior that are directly anxiety related. So, claustrophobia is the fear of closed spaces. Acrophobia is the fear of heights. Aquaphobia is the fear of being on or in water. Agrizoophobia is the fear of wild animals. Erotophobia, fear of sexual love or sexual questions. And there is a long list about the different phobias. You can have a fear of open high places, a fear of vomiting, a fear of insanity, fear of pain, fear of streets or crossing the street, fear of cats, fear of birds, fear of property, etc. There's a whole website that is devoted to naming and recording all the phobias that have ever been mentioned in some sort of scientific area. Obsessive compulsive disorder, otherwise known as OCD, is extreme preoccupations with certain thoughts and compulsive performance of certain behaviors. I would like you to stop the lecture right now and check out the YouTube video giving you an example of an individual who suffers from an obsessive compulsive disorder. All right, and finally, eating disorders. I thought it was very important to note that as well here as a psychological disorder because of the high prevalence of these types of disorders in real life and in the media. So eating disorders is the difficulty managing food intake, such as life-threatening failure to maintain sufficient body weight. All right, you can stop again the lecture right now and check out the YouTube clip